When trying to get better, a lot of players will simply spam games in hopes that a large sample size will eventually give them the skills needed to make it out of their elo. And while playing a lot is important, low elo players skip the most important step when it comes to actually gaining rank. Identifying mistakes and actively practicing to fix them makes sure that your time spent playing is efficient instead of a complete time sink. Unfortunately, this is by far the hardest thing to do. You can't know what you don't know, after all. That's why we're here to point out mistakes that you are definitely making in your games so that you'll know what you need to work on and don't get stuck playing 1,000 games just to end up the same rank at the end of the season. Join us as we point out fixes to your mistakes that will make your rating go up. Spacing in general tends to be one of the hardest things for many players, and knowing how to correctly melee range is something you can start doing right away. And no, this isn't just for melee champions. Let's watch a clip from Gold where this issue will become extremely obvious. Let's follow along with Zed as the wave is crashing to his tower. He shadows in and uses combo and then starts chasing down the Neeko. While he does land everything, unfortunately Neeko does as well, and it ultimately leads to his death as the enemy jungler shows up to claim their kill. So what should Zed have done differently? If we go back to look, Zed needed to have closed the distance between him and Neeko in a very different way. He was trying to stay alongside Neeko and follow her to her tower, but doing so would maintain an almost parallel line, kind of like this. If instead he used his movement to try and get closer to Neeko like this, he could have easily lived here. You might be confused, so let's explain. When I'm watching my students and other low elo players, I often see that they don't use the time between their auto attacks very well. They'll frequently just stand completely still, whether it's because they just don't think about it or they don't know where they're supposed to go in a skirmish. All champions have an auto attack range, and while we think of melee champions as being, well, melee, there's a big difference between the 150 range that a lot of them have and 0. If you try to auto a target from max range as Zed did in this example, you'll actually be pretty far away from your target. Instead, you can click right behind a target and get your character model to basically be overlapping with theirs. This may not feel super significant, but ask any bot laner how it feels to play Lucian into Caitlyn, and they'll tell you that the range advantage is horrible. Well, it's the same distance. Moving closer accomplishes two things. One, if that target is going to try and escape, being right on top of them gives you the best chances of following up. Watch this Elise clip as I melee range into Kha'Zix, even while in my ranged form, simply because I know that he'll want to leap out and I can follow with repel once my cooldown comes back. If I had just stayed at range to avoid Kha'Zix doing any damage to me, there was no way that I would be able to follow up and secure the kill. But by getting as close as possible to him, I was just barely able to stay close enough to repel onto him and finish the job. The second thing that this accomplishes is that it makes it about 4 times harder for your opponent to land a skill shot on you. If you're standing at max range, it's very obvious what direction they should aim, and they have almost 90 degrees where the skill shot is going to hit you. Basically, it's almost impossible to miss, and it's exactly why Zed got hit by Neeko's E before. From max range, it takes a long time to get from one side of the dummy to the other. If you step in super close, your opponent is going to have a very hard time telling where they should aim, because you can easily dart around and be on all sides of them practically instantly, meaning that they have to randomly guess which direction you'll be in next. While Zed didn't stand still between his autos, he made it about as easy as possible for Neeko to land skills on him, and he paid the price for it. When you're trying to chase someone down, or you have a fight that comes down to just dodging skill shots, it's often in your best interest to actually go melee range, as in 0 units away from them, even as a ranged character. It's kind of crazy how knowing just one mechanic or concept can have such a drastic impact on your gameplay. For example, I bet you don't know how tower aggro actually works on minions. Towers have an invisible target selection center, right here. Whatever minion is closest to this area will be hit first. For example, after this minion goes down, watch how this challenger Twisted Fate prepares each and every minion using this trick. Once you learn this, you instantly get hundreds of free gold every game. Or here's another example of something you probably didn't know. If your opponent has to leash for their jungler, you can walk up to the wave like so and auto attack a range creep. This draws temporary minion aggro, causing the minions to target you. Then back off and let the wave reset. Instead of splitting up damage evenly across 3 melee minions, the enemy wave will focus fire 1 melee minion down a few seconds faster than usual. This way, your opponent misses experience on the first wave while they leash, which can let you hit level 2 first. Both of these tips are actually just a small part of our Master in Minutes courses on CSing and wave control that you'll find on our website, skillcap.com. In fact, we have the largest catalog of premium League of Legends courses in the entire world. And the best part, our service is completely risk-free to try, as you're kept safe with rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using skill caps, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, now next up, we have another spacing issue, so let's take a look at a gold student's POV to see a critical mistake that is easily fixed. She's playing quite aggressively and winning the push war for level 2. However, it all comes crumbling down in an instant when Seraphine lands a double E, rooting her and ruining the lane phase completely. So how can we make it so that this doesn't happen again? We can remember one simple rule: A click forward, right click back. If you don't use attack move, it's a command that targets the thing that's closest to your character. Or if you go into settings and toggle this, it'll target what's closest to where you actually click, which is what we recommend. What happened in this fight is that while A clicking to harass, Caitlyn accidentally inputted a right click towards her opponent, which caused a horrible misposition. Of course, after every auto attack, you need to input a movement command to cancel the auto wind down and start repositioning. But when you're trying to stay at maximum range, like in short poke engagements like this, you should always input your right click either to the side or straight backwards, just slightly away from your character before A clicking again. This will make sure that you never accidentally step too close into range and you can keep abusing your distance. Even really great players in the past have tried to have crazy mouse precision and only right click, but everyone messes up sometimes and A clicking just makes it way less likely to happen. You can see how I can A click and right click in the exact same spot and it looks like I have insane spacing without even moving my mouse at all. It's really easy to implement and trying to right click only can easily just lead to your death. This is a super common mistake for a lot of players, and as someone who often plays melee champions and has to deal with these ranged characters, let me show you how to exploit it. Of course, as a melee character into ranged champions, you need to close the gap to win, but they're not going to just let you do so freely. Even gold players can kite pretty well nowadays, so if you just run at someone, they're probably going to kite you and you'll feel like you can never reach them. That's why you have to mess with their heads a little bit. In this clip, I need to get onto Kai'Sa, but she's spacing pretty well here. I could flash, but why do that when I can just break her ankles instead? I input a click right behind me here to feint like I'm going to run away. And then after I see that she's taking the bait and chasing, I simply turn and just watch what happens. She walks right into my waiting arms, straight into melee range where I can easily hit her. Of course, this fight now goes exactly how you'd expect, and this is something that you can completely avoid if you just learn to A-click correctly. But if you want to absolutely ruin any ranged champion's day, just practice moving in tiny bursts like this. A lot of low elo players move in huge sweeping movements and don't change direction quickly. Doing so makes you unpredictable and can make players mess up their spacing because they aren't A-clicking correctly. Remember, if you're trying to stay at range but need to move forward, A-click, don't right click. Perfect spacing at the highest level is always going to look insane. And while a lot of people will try to clown on Kai'Sa here, note how small the margins were for Xayah's outplay. Both of them had almost perfect spacing the entire time. It just so happened that Xayah had move speed from W and just slightly edged out her opponent because of it. I show this clip a lot because it perfectly exemplifies how insane and important spacing can be. Microscopic movements can make all the difference. This next one is more of a positioning error. Once again, let's use a student's replay to showcase the mistake in action, and then we'll give you the fix. Aphelios and Janna are having a really rough time in this lane. After an engage, Janna is left at pretty low HP and is still level 2. She's forced to sit relatively far back while Aphelios tries to get CS, and this is where he commits a cardinal sin of positioning. He doesn't die here, but he should have. The biggest issue is that he allowed Zac to get in a perfect position to pinch him up against a wall. At all times, you should visualize a straight line from an opponent that can run at you and extend it past your character. If that line touches a wall shortly after, you're probably in a bad spot. You're almost always going to want room to maneuver away from your opponents. And as we all learned in geometry class, the shortest distance to a point is a straight line. If a wall stands right in your way, you're going to have to do some pretty suboptimal movements in order to get away from someone that's coming right at you. And this allows them to easily go for an angle to cut off your escape path and catch up to you. Junglers will abuse this all the time as they're ganking. Here, Heimer flashes away from me, but you can see that I'm not at all concerned with him. I know that his angle here is is going to pin him right up against the wall, and he has absolutely no hope of escaping. Now I can just aim to cut off the Varus and ignore Heimer until later. In the same way, Zac could have easily walked or even E'd behind Aphelios to cut off his escape angle, and the wall would pin him into the fight with Ezreal, spelling certain doom. We can watch another student of mine fall victim to this exact same trap in a different game. They know exactly where Alistar is in this clip, but due to positioning right up against the wall, they pin themselves and give Alistar the absolute perfect engage. Make sure to keep this space behind you open and available to move towards, just so that you don't find yourself suddenly with nowhere to go and your back literally to the wall. All of these habits were related when it comes to how to position your character, and that's for a good reason. It's a fundamental that no matter who you're playing or what role you're playing, it's going to apply to you. And it's why I see these 3 mistakes so often. Sometimes the seemingly simple things are the things that make the biggest difference. And I'd be willing to bet that right-clicking is one of the things that you've done the most in League of Legends. However, there can always be more thought put into it, and it often has the biggest payoffs when it comes to areas to improve. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our website, skillcaps.com. We have premium courses for everything you need to know to start ranking up. Taught by the best players, Skillcaps is the perfect platform to help take your game to the next level. The best part, our service is completely risk-free to try as you're kept safe with rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using Skillcap, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, that's a wrap on this one, guys. We here at Skillcaps want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.